Okay, right.
That's a great way to start off.
Can it be Dear Emperor?
So, ages
Oh
ago,
my god!
when
What the
humanity
fuck is
was
that?
still in its infancy, a
yeah.
large conclave of shamans, which was
You
humans
see, I had
with
it on like
massively
small
psychic
screens. I
ability.
didn't notice until right at the end.
Shamans with massive psychic ability who foresaw the future and knew that humanity would need to be united behind a single figure and against the terrors of the galaxy. And so they all committed ritual suicide to create the perfect being, which was Kronk, of course. The Emperor of Mankind, a being of immense psychic and martial ability. And he'd then go on. This is like pre like times. This is like thousands of years BC. So he'd go on
Before the beginning.
he'd certainly go on to influence humanity throughout the ages, and he's even theorized by members of the community that he took on like various messianic forms. So they think he might have been Jesus at one point. Yeah. So then, go on to Korn, Nurgle, and Zinch. So during the European Middle Ages,
What is his name?
Korn, Nurgle, and Zinch.
I know those bands.
Porn.
Various gods started to grow in strength and power due to all the wars, plagues, technological discovery, and all that jazz that was happening during the Middle Ages. These three gods were, of course, Korn, the blood of war, murder, and blood. Yeah, I said that one. Nurgle, the god of disease, decay,
Blood,
death, and
warm blood.
destruction. Yeah, he's Papa Nurgle. He's grandfather of awesome, and he's really wholesome. He's like the wholesome chaos god.
Did you just say he was the god of disease, though?
Yeah,
I thought Nurgles were in Harry Potter.
that's Nurglings.
Oh.
No, Nargles, sorry. Yeah.
Nargle.
And then we have Zinch, the god of change. He has a vagina mouth.
He's cool. What the fuck?
Yeah, he's a god of change, evolution, intrigue, and sorcery. And although
Oh.
they had existed since the dawn of time and reside purely in the immaterial realm known as the Warp, they can still influence and be influenced by the material realm.
A topless hovering man.
Yes.
What
Hey,
means-
listen. Listen.
So
What the fuck?
during the third millennium, mankind began expanding into space. So first they colonized the solar system, terraformed Mars, and then they sent out great generation ships into the void, with some ships taking 10 generations of inhabitants to even reach their destination.
Damn.
Numerous colonies were spread throughout a portion of the galaxy, but the colonies would be unable to communicate with each other due to the vast distances between them, and there's no real way to quickly travel between them besides these generation ships.
Is that a vaccination ship?
No, it's the Nauvoo from Expanse, but okay. This was until the discovery of the warp drive and the navigators. So during the 15th millennium, this is like ages after all these colonies got settled, psychic mutants called navigators began appearing across human worlds. So they've got like a third eye on their forehead, which just helps them see through the warp and just sort of help navigate. Hence the name navigators. And this was shortly followed by the invention of the warp drive. So humanity was now able to travel between their colonies faster than the speed of light by traveling through the deadly realms of the Immaterium. And fortunately, another invention was made called the Geller Field, which basically helps keep the fucky-wucky bullshit energies of the warp outside of the ship. Because if a Geller Field were to fail, then you'd have some interesting times on that ship with demons and other stuff appearing and just generally fucking up your day. So this interstellar travel allowed human colonies to start to cooperate and interact on a normal timescale. So commerce and political unions became possible, and following this, humanity actually joined into a massive federated interstellar union, and a new golden age of humanity had dawned. But as all good things, that must come to an end. So humanity had blossomed and soon created a race of intelligent robots called the Men of Iron to help perform their labours and military duties. However, of course, the Men of Iron rebelled against mankind, and a conflict of cataclysmic proportions broke out. And although humanity was able to triumph against these robots, it cost them dearly. Many planets no longer had the resource to support their populations, and so they began to starve and wither. At this time as well, other human psychers began to appear in large numbers across settled worlds. So it brought about humanity's real, true introduction to the demonic horrors of the warp, and so many also blamed Psychers for all that happened to humanity, such as the Men of Iron rebellion and stuff like that. During the rise of the human civilization into interstellar space, there was this ancient species called the Eldar. It's basically space elves. They began to... Well, they had an empire that already far outshone that of mankind's, but it was slowly in decline. So following their victory, like an ancient war against this species called the Necrontyr and their gods called the Catan, they won and didn't have any enemies anymore, and so were just free to expand without conflict. But that led to decadence and hedonism on a grand scale. So there's basically... It took them... They did more and more shit to try and basically get off, so they'd start murdering each other and just doing really... like gross stuff.
I'd like to visit.
The Eldar are just so much more psychically in tune than humans are. Their hedonism, pleasure, and gratuity began to collect in the warp as a single entity. This entity was called Slanesh, and she is the chaos god of excess, pleasure, decadence, lust, and pride.
Sexy!
They literally murder fucked a god into existence. The creation of Slanesh created such a shockwave in the warp that a massive hole in space appeared right at the center of the Eldar Empire, the Eye of Terror. This shockwave continued.
That sounds like a fucking green text chart, Jordan.
They made warp travel. These warp storms made warp travel and communication completely impossible. So the Eldar race receded into almost nothing, surviving on great ships called craft worlds, and the worlds of humanity were cut off from one another and began to actually destroy themselves or fall prey to hostile alien races. So humanity had actually been brought to its knees. Although it's the capital of humanity, it was not spared the disaster. Terra turned its weapons on itself and became a savage world. The sophisticated governments of old were gone, replaced by barbarian warlords who led great hordes against one another. It was here where the Emperor finally revealed himself to humanity as a warlord, more powerful than any other. Although he was a powerful being, his true power came from his rationality and foresight, along with his mastery of science. He led a genetically engineered army of superhumans called Thunder Warriors, who would go on to form the template of the Space Marines, and with them he conquered old Earth, destroying those who would not submit to him. But his goals were larger than merely control of the planet, because he aspired for something more. The Emperor intended to use the unified Terra to start his reconquest of the galaxy under an Imperium of Man and the Imperial Truth. The Emperor was very opposed to religion, and saw it as the cause of many of mankind's strifes. There's an entire video, which is all about how he finds the last church on Earth and has a conversation with the Prophet. So it's a really good video. It's like an hour long though, but whatever. So the Primarchs, using ancient technology from the Dark Age of technology, which was around the time of the Men of Iron, and through making a bargain with the Chaos Gods to turn humanity to chaos worship, the Emperor created 20 genetically enhanced super beings. I know there's only 18. They did a thing where 2 of them
Laughing
were...
at the guy in the bottom right.
Oh yeah. Technically there's 21. The guy in the
Little
bottom
face
right,
behind him.
the guy in the bottom
Yo,
right, that's
where's-
Alfarius Omegon, but Omegon is his twin brother. So,
Where's number 1 and 2?
one
Funny, you should ask.
is on the left and 2's on the
Oh yeah.
2.
Oh man,
yeah.
this ain't numbered. What the fuck?
2 is one of the 2 that didn't or doesn't exist anymore.
Who the fuck's number 3 and why is he a Simpson?
Homie!
That's Fulgrim.
Yo,
Why
golden
is he
boy.
like that?
Because he's all about hedonism and shit like that.
Who
I
pissed
don't
on
know
him?
what that means. Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Who
He's all
pissed
about
on my
being
son?
perfect and stuff like that, so he altered
Oh.
himself. He created 20 genetically enhanced super beings, each personifying one single aspect of himself. These were his Primarchs, and they're here to lead his armies in the Great Crusade to come. But the Emperor didn't hold up his side of the deal with Chaos, and so, they just sort of stole his Primarchs and scattered them all around the galaxy. But he's not going to be dissuaded by a little problem like that. So, in the 30th millennium, the Great Crusade began, and it started with a pact of the machine cult of Mars. So the Martians had turned to a great. The Martians are just humans, not like green little men. But the Martians had turned to a great technological invention during the Age of Strife and had converted the red planet into a massive forge world, so just dedicated to industrial production, so they can just pump out video games all day long. The Martians worshipped a machine god known as the Omnissiah, and they used extensive bionics, both of which the Emperor just did not like at all. But he kind of needed their factories to build his ships and supply his troops, so he made a deal to not just completely crush them. In turn, they'll help him in his conquest. He even let them see him as a god incarnate, because, you know, he's nice like that.
Wow.
So, using the genetic template of his 20 Primarchs, the Emperor then created 20 legions of super warriors, the Space Marines, also known as the Adeptus Astartes. These late legions then followed him in his conquest of the solar system, although they were inhibited by the absence of their liege father Primarchs. However, this did not last, as soon the Great Crusade found on the planet Chthoniya Horus Lupercal, this guy here, number XVI.
16.
No, XVI.
My favourite number, XVI.
Having been discovered quite quickly, Horus was still actually quite young, so he was taken. The Emperor took him under his wing like a good dad should, and taught him all about warfare. And they actually began to see each other as father and son, which is a bond that not really many of the other Primarchs, besides maybe Sanguinius or Bird Boy over here,
Sanguinius.
Fucking wingman, fucking idiot.
But after 30 more years of conquest, the second Primarch was eventually discovered, which was Rabute Gilliman, this guy. And then soon sort of the rest followed after the next 100 years.
Does number 10 have a hat, or is that the background? The X, the second one.
That's the background. He's
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was
Same
even have a
question
hat.
for 4 in top right. Is the box part of his armor, or is it just background stuff?
It's part of his
Like
armor.
the square.
Looks like Showdown.
He
yeah.
wanted himself to be displayed virtually, so he put himself on screen.
He's got a face cam.
It's got an iPad slapped in his armor.
So yeah, when each Primarch was discovered, their respective legions would expand dramatically because they'd usually the Primarchs were on civilized planets or human planets, so they'd immediately like just grab a bunch of recruits from the planet and turn them into Space Marines, because usually they're on like a lot of like really inhumane planets, so they're like really tough, hardy people that live there, so they're really good candidates for being Space Marines. And because they actually have the genetic sample of a proper genetic sample of the Primarchs, creating new Space Marines does not take as long, so you can bang them out in just a year rather than like it took at least 10 to make Space Marines back at the start. And then once the Crusade grew large enough, it was then separated into different fleets to quickly spread out and do the conquering much quicker. Each Primarch and Legion would take charge of an expeditionary fleet, although there's quite a few that consisted of only human soldiers, just because there's only 20 legions, so they can't cover everything. But on the planet of Ulanor, Horus and the Emperor's expeditionary fleet battled a great alien race known as the Orcs, big green fungal boys who speak like British Cockney people. After slaying the largest Orc in history together, the beast began to rout and then infight, and the Emperor saw that he could leave the conquest of the galaxy in the hands of his sons, so that he could return to Terra to work on the next phase of his plan to ensure mankind's dominance and survival. But he didn't tell anyone what this was. He just said, I have to go be a dad, but not to you, and then named Horus War Master in his stead and charged him to go continue conquering the rest of the galaxy.
So my planet needs me.
Yeah. I
Literally went to his home.
I pledge allegiance to the planet, the flag, the humankind of the Emperor of Mankind.
So, quickly of note, we need to talk about one legion in particular, which is the Word Bearers. So a specific Space Marine and Legion, the Erebus, the first chaplain of the Word Bearers, which is that guy. They're more fanatical than all the other legions, and during the conquest they actually spread word that the Emperor is a god, something he didn't really take too kindly to, and he basically, after they conquered a planet and made it like a paradise of Emperor god worship, The Emperor turned up with some people and just literally burnt the entire planet to the ground and made this legion watch as he did it, because, yeah, making religion is a big no-no for him. And so
Really?
Erebus was like, well,
That's very godlike of him to do, to be fair.
yeah, yeah. So Erebus was like, well, if he doesn't want to be worshipped, let's find someone else to worship. So he found the Chaos Gods, and they started talking to him, and then he started talking to his Primarch Lorgar, and then this worship of the Chaos Gods soon secretly spread through high echelons of the Legion, and then they began plotting, and they even stole a weapon from an alien empire, who I would have gone into a bit more because it's really minor and only really necessary for this one weapon that they stole from them. So yeah, also yeah, hashtag fuck Erebus.
Heretic.
So yeah, the seeds of heresy. On the moon of a planet called Davin, which is a world previously conquered by the Imperium, Horus was asked to return, as the governor he put in charge of the world was spouting traitor rhetoric. And they're outraged at this because he personally assigned this governor and was on quite good terms with him. He was just very annoyed that someone would just turn his back on the Imperium and all that they worked for. So he personally led the charge to go kill the traitor governor on this planet and fight through all his enemies that were strangely zombie-like in appearance and wouldn't go down just as easy. And the governor was strangely blessed with unnatural speed, and he even wounded Horus with the alien weapon Erebus had stolen, which is interesting. How he even got that. This weapon actually brought Horus quite close to death, and the Wordbearers pleaded that they could bring Horus back from the brink, as modern medicine was currently failing to even hold back the disease that was taking over him. So under the watch of the Wordbearers, Horus actually made contact with the Chaos Gods, who showed him a vision of the future, which was an Imperium in which the Emperor was actually worshipped as a god, and where none of the Primarchs were actually around, hinting, or Horus had feared that his father was lying to him, and to see that he and his brother Primarchs would be discarded to make way of his father's ascension to godhood brought him to an absolute rage. Then he denounced the Emperor and promised to serve the Chaos Gods in order to stop the Emperor from using humanity for his own means. So yeah, he suddenly paints his armor black so you can know he's a bad guy.
Oh,
Convenient.
At this moment, Magnus the Red, which is another Primarch, he's the Primarch of the Thousand Sons. He's an extremely potent Psyker, which is another aspect of the Emperor. So much so, yeah, even rivals that of the Emperor. He foresaw the coming conflict between the Emperor and Horus's faction. And so, in an attempt to quickly relay a message, he used powers that the Emperor previously banned quite a few years ago to transport his spirit back to Terra. But then, in doing so, he kind of really fucked over the Emperor's secret project that he was working on and allowed demons to pour into the Imperial Palace. So, yeah.
Like you do.
The Emperor's not particularly proud of Magnus right now. So now we go on to a planet called Istvan. So it was meant to be...
Bruh.
Shut up.
Bruh.
Meant to be a pretty normal conquest, just a rebel human system that didn't want to submit to humanity. So the Space Marines would go down and kill everyone and make sure everything was back in order. But Horus knew that not all his brothers would join him in this rebellion, and so Master demanded a devastating ambush. So on this Imperial conquest of Istvan, it's where several other legions were present as well, which was of course, Primarch Horus was there with his Lunar Wolves legion, Mortarion of the Death Guard, don't try and remember all these names, Fulgrim of the Emperor's Children, and Angron. Fulgrim was Yellow-Face Boy. Angron of the World Eaters, which is basically just a berserker on steroids. So they only sent Space Marines down to the planet who they knew would not break vow to the Emperor. And then as they were fighting everyone, they virus bombed the entire planet. So
oof.
yeah, everyone on the planet just fucking choked. When word of this reached the loyalist Primarch of the Imperial Fist, Rogel Dawn, which was this only happened because a single ship in this great armada orbiting this planet was still loyalist and managed to jump into warp like very riskily, and so it managed to limp its way back to Terra, and then warned Rogel Dawn that this has happened. So he then dispatched a combined force of 7 legions to Istvan to go basically arrest these cheeky fuckers. It's comprised of Corvus Corax of the Raven Guard, aka my favorite daddy, Ferrus Manus of the Iron Hands. His name literally means Iron Hands, of the Iron Hands. GW are really great with names. Vulcan of the Salamanders, Alfarius and the Alpha Legion. Yeah, again,
Hang on a minute, you're clicking buttons, right?
That's JT, I think.
Oh, okay. I was going to say I'm still on Istvan.
Conrad Kurz and the Night Lords, Perturabo and the Iron Warriors. Yeah, Conrad Kurz is basically a super edgy version
bastard.
of Corvus Corax. They're both edgy, but Conrad is just much edgier. He's like a vampire. And then, of course, Rogel sent Lorgar and the Wordbearers as well, because they hadn't revealed that they were traitors yet. So after making planetfall, the Raven Guard, Iron Hands, and Salamanders immediately launched an initial assault on the dug-in traitor legions, but were handily beaten back. However, when they began returning to their lines, they were attacked by the 4 legions who stayed behind and built fortifications, so they're caught in a crossfire between 8 traitor legions. It was a massacre. During which, hundreds of thousands of loyalist Space Marines died, and the Iron Hands Primarch was decapitated after a long duel by his friend turned corrupted shell, Fulgrim.
Sounds like me.
Yo, they're pink though.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Those are the Emperor's children, and that's a mix of Iron Hands.
Hot pink.
Oh yeah, that is just Iron Hands. And there you can see the duel between Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus. He literally has a giant wrench in that image, and I fucking love it.
Sentry going up!
So the surviving 2 Primarchs of the Loyalists here, Corvus Corax and Vulcan, actually managed to survive somehow, and they led a number of the Marines off-world, but the legions had basically been completely decimated due to this. So now fully realized, the heresy had begun in earnest. The galaxy was absolutely torn asunder, as almost every aspect of the Imperium was split in 2. The Mechanicus had their own civil war and split between the Mechanicus and the Dark Mechanicum. The Loyalist Dark Angels had a civil war, which they were still dealing with in the present day, as the traitors are scattered to all corners of the galaxy to escape judgment. Worlds and their armies took sides in the Great Conflict, and just countless lives were lost. Going back to Magnus a little, so after breaking that ban on the use of sorcery, the Thousand Sons and Magnus were actually set upon by the Space Wolves Legion, which were loyalists, under direct orders of the Emperor to bring Magnus to Terra. Oh wait, I should have done that first, yeah. Those are the Space Wolves. But Horus did a cheeky fuck thing, and intercepted the and changed the orders, so that the orders were to go and kill Magnus instead, and destroy their home planet. So after burning Prospero, the Thousand Sons joined Horus's side in the conflict, because they fucking hate those Space Wolf fighting furry bastards. And now we get to the apex of the story, which is the final siege of Terra. So after fighting all over the galaxy, I wasn't going to go into every single thing of what the Horus heresy is, because even I don't know everything. There's just so much that happened between Istvan and the siege of Terra that it would take much longer than this already has to summarize. So yeah, Horus's objective was in sight. He'd amassed his forces, barring the Alpha Legion and a large contingent of Wordbearers, because they were off distracting the Space Wolves and Ultramarines. The Ultramarines were a very big legion and the largest Loyalist legion left around. And so Horus began his assault on Terra. Rogel had recalled all his Loyalist legions back to Terra in order to aid in its defense, but only the White Scars, which are basically Genghis Khan Mongolian wannabes, they all ride around on motorbikes. It's fucking kick-ass.
Pingus.
The Blood Angels, which were basically also vampires, and then the Imperial Fists, which are just people who really like building sandcastles. They were there to defend Terra, along with the Loyalist Mechanicus, and then any human forces that didn't want to get their ass fucked by Chaos. And then also the revered Guardians of the Emperor, which was the Adeptus Custodes, which I realised I didn't get a picture of, I don't think. Oh, wait, no, yeah, there it is. Yeah, that one. I forgot to get the companion's picture, though. That would have been funny, but whatever. So, yeah, after vicious fighting all over Terra, including inside the Imperial Palace itself, the Emperor knew that the only way to actually win the battle was to slay Horus, and so he gathered his best warriors and actually teleported onto Horus's flagship. Although Horus used his chaos magic fuckery to just separate all the boarding parties, so they just scattered all over his ship, so they couldn't be united in their approach. And Sanguinius was the first to arrive to Horus. And Horus tried to convince the
He's going to wish he wasn't.
Horus tried to convince Sanguinius to actually join him one last time, but Sanguinius refused. But he'd already fought quite a lot on Terra, and he'd actually killed a greater demon and did all sorts of really cool shit, but he was just really wounded and just exhausted from the fight. So Horus actually killed him there in this throne room. And shortly after this, like moments after, the Emperor arrived and saw that Horus was actually fully imbued by the powers of chaos, making him even a match for even the Emperor. After accusing Horus of being nothing more than a puppet of the Chaos Gods, the Emperor just gets psychically blasted by Horus. But the Emperor's pretty cool. He's got psychic power blocks as well, so he just sort of deflects it and stuff. And then an awesome duel commenced, like both demigods using their physical and mental prowess against one another. But the Emperor can't really bring himself to kill his favorite son. Like, this is the guy he charged, like, conquering the rest of the galaxy. He was the first Primarch he found, you know? He's his son. He's the only one who thought he was a son, besides dead angel boy down here, but he's dead now.
By the way, the Emperor is on the left, as you can clearly tell.
No, this is Emperor. You can clearly see by the Kronk hairdo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's all coming to
What's your name? Kronk.
But because the Emperor couldn't bring himself to use his full power, Horus grievously wounded the Emperor, carving open his breastplate and actually blasting a lot of the flesh from his face, including an eye. Horus ripped out one of the Emperor's arms and broke his back Bane style over his knee and then threw him to the ground. At this point, a single human named Alanius Pius came into the throne room and, seeing the Emperor's broken form, actually charged in between them both. He was flayed alive for daring to defy Horus, but this showed the Emperor that his son Horus was gone. He just killed this single human completely without remorse, and so using the last of the Emperor's strength, he unleashed a psychic attack that just completely destroyed Horus, both physically and psychically, just scattered his dust to the ether. There's just nothing that exists of Horus anymore. So this utter destruction of Horus sent such a massive psychic shockwave through like the traitor ranks that demon forces were actually sucked back into the warp, and traitor human and space marine forces just fled the planet because they know we're fucked. If Horus is gone, then we just need to get the heck out of here because he was the big daddy of everything. So they make their way back into the Eye of Terror, where the big thing where the Eldar murder fucked into existence. And then moments after, again, this is moments after this happens. If people just waited a couple minutes, they probably could have beaten Horus. But yeah. Rogel Dawn, Primarch of the Imperial Fist, arrived and then retrieved the Emperor's body. And the Emperor then ordered Rogel Dawn to have him interned in the Golden Throne, which is a relic, again, from the Dark Age of technology. It was also part of the Emperor's secret plan. Using the Golden Throne's psychic channeling technology, the Emperor could project his mind into the warp and guide ships through its currents. And although the Emperor's secret project would now never come to pass, the throne would keep him in a partially alive state so that the Empyrean may live on and that humanity may endure. Go watch these things.
Is this homework?
Yes. I'll be
Extra homework. Woo!
End of part 1.
Part 2.
Surprise. That was good.